नमस्कार, माझं नाव कार्तिक आहे. मी गमभानाच्या सगळ्या मुलांकडून आपलं स्वागत करतो. Constellations is a Gamabhana forum for thought-provoking conversations with leaders in business, academia, government, technology, public services, and many other areas. We believe that children of all ages will find this interaction with the people who followed the road less traveled very inspirational.
नमस्कार, माझं नाव सई आहे. वेगवेगळ्या फील्ड्समधल्या सक्सेसफुल आणि पॅशनेट मराठी लोकांची मुलांना ओळख व्हावी आणि त्यांच्यासोबत इंटरॅक्ट होता यावं म्हणून आम्ही कॉन्स्टेलेशन सेशन सुरू केले. आजपर्यंत आपण मिस्टर चितळे, डॉक्टर हिरेमठ, पंडित आनंद भाटे, डॉक्टर माशेलकर, वीणा गवांकर आणि धनुश्री लेले यांच्यासोबत गप्पा मारल्या आणि खूप शिकलो. आजचं आपलं सेशन आहे कुलदीपक देशपांडे यांच्यासोबत. माझे मित्र कार्तिक आणि मी आजचं सेशन फॅसिलिटेट करणार आहोत. थँक्यू.
Can you imagine life without any of the things we see in this picture? Have you ever thought, where does the food we eat or the milk we drink every day come from? Some of you may have thought that these come from the shops. That's correct, but where do the shops get them from? Some of you may already know that everything we eat and everything we drink apart from water comes from farms.
कुलदीपक देशपांडे हे एक सक्सेसफुल शेतकरी आहेत. सस्टेनेबल फार्मिंग आणि फूड प्रोसेसिंग या फील्ड्समध्ये ते काम करतात. मुंबई येथील ICT आणि SPJain इन्स्टिट्यूट या रेप्युटेड इन्स्टिट्यूट्समधून त्यांनी केमिकल इंजिनिअरिंग आणि मॅनेजमेंटमध्ये हायर एज्युकेशन घेतले. त्यांनी 14 वर्षे मल्टीनॅशनल कंपनीजमध्ये मोठ्या पदांवर काम केले. पण शेतीबद्दलची ओढ, आवड आणि पॅशनमुळे त्यांनी 2008 मध्ये नोकरी करणं सोडून पूर्ण वेळ शेती सुरू केली. सस्टेनेबल फार्मिंग आणि फूड प्रोसेसिंग यावर त्यांचे मुख्य फोकस आहे.
Today we will learn about farming, farming life, and the future of farming. Although most of us may not go on to become farmers, we will try and find out what we all can do for farms, farmers, and our better future. Now I will hand the session over to Kuldeepak Kaka.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all excited to learn a little bit of farming. First of all, I would like to thank Santosh, Supriya, and the GAMABHANA Forum for having me on this show. I think it is very important that every person on earth is sensitized about agriculture. And this forum is something I look forward to from that standpoint, that this is an opportunity for me to interact with kids of different ages, of impressionable age, and to some extent sensitize you, educate you, make you aware of lots of dimensions of farming. I have structured my presentation in about 4 parts. First one talks of why farming. Second one gives you a glimpse of the farming life. Third one and the fourth one essentially talks of the future of farming. Okay, so Santosh, I would request you to kindly get into the first part of the session, first part of the presentation. Why farming? Well, just look at your daily life. You can do without a doctor for a day, without a teacher, without a lawyer, without an architect, without an engineer, without a particular service provider, without an automobile, without many such persons or professionals. but you cannot do without a farmer for even one day, because it is quintessential for the very sustenance of life. Okay, Santosh. Okay, this is in a nutshell what a few ancient sages in India said about farming, the greatness of agriculture. Maharshi Parashar, who's credited with the first treatise exclusively on agriculture, written about 1200 years ago, he says farming is supreme because without food, there can be no life. And without farming, there can be no food. He elaborates in his chapter called Krishi-Mahatmya, okay, that regardless of how much money you have, regardless of how many riches you have, regardless of what kind of treasures and precious stones you may have, when it comes to satiating your hunger, it's food that you need. And therefore, food, and therefore, agriculture, and therefore, the farmer is supreme. And he, in fact, ends the chapter by saying, this is how great farming is. And therefore, you should leave everything else and to the best of your ability, pursue farming. Okay. Tasmat sarvam parityajya krushim yatnena karayet. That is what is incidentally a great motivator for my decision to quit a corporate life and come into farming. I'll take you through my childhood in a quick manner. Whenever we travel to our relatives during vacations, whether it is summer vacation or a Diwali vacation or the Christmas vacation, I always enjoyed taking the window seat of the bus and taking a look at the farms alongside, trees and farms. The same route gave me different landscapes in different times of the year. In summer, it was harsh. In a Diwali vacation, it used to be pretty lush green. And in Christmas vacation, it used to be, partly harvested farms and partly sown farms. So I always was amused and bewitched by the scenario, the rhythm that these landscapes offered me. And so I didn't have any ancestral land, but these scenes always used to encourage me to think that, okay, someday I will have a farm. Someday I should own a farm. Someday I should live on a farm. That kind of excitement was there. And this is again, uh, after 14 years of corporate life, I happened to read Maharshi Parashar's Krishi Parashar, and that certainly was a trigger point that, okay, now enough is enough. I always wanted to do own a farm, but let's heed what he says and actually adopt farming. So that certainly was a trigger point. Another ancient sage, Tiruvalluvar, in his Thirukkural, which is a 2,500-year-old treatise, okay, one of the most ancient treatises of all time. He mentions that farmers are the linchpins of the world. Linchpins in the sense they hold everything together. On the one hand, he gives an example of a monk. Even the monk will lose his calm if he doesn't have food. In Marathi, we say, upashi poti kirtan sudha changla aikta yet nahi. That is exactly the point. And on the other hand, he gives an example of a wealthy nation, of a grainful a nation that can enable a king to conquer other kingdoms, which means Thiruvalluvar has given two extremes, one of the monk on the spiritual side and another of the king on the material side. That material ambitions can also be enabled on the basis of good farming, and spiritual achievements can also be enabled by good farming. So he has one chapter dedicated to farming, unlike Parashar's book, which is completely on farming. He elaborates Krishi Mahatmya, then Vrishti Khanda and Krishi Khanda. It's a pretty elaborate treatise. So the greatness of agriculture has been in Western, sorry, in the Indian ethos, Indian heritage. The next slide talks of what the Western greats, not just Western but Eastern also. You have Masanobu Fukuoka of Japan, um, iconic farmer, iconic personality. George Washington, the first president of the United States, he said, "I would rather be on my farm than be emperor of the world." And he also said, agriculture is the most healthful, most useful, and the most noble employment of man. Then you have another contemporary saying by name Wendell Berry. He said, "We have neglected the truth that a good farmer is a craftsman of the highest order." Okay? Why I'm saying this all to you? Because I want to reinforce the point. See, our industrialized way of life, our capitalistic economy based of life, is is probably 100 years old. But the history of farming is more than 5,000 years old, and it has stood the test of time. And again, if I were to put my hand on heart, well, we are going to see those days again, because the world is going to soon run out of resources that are taken for granted. Okay, so in the first two slides, we saw not just India, but even Westerners and even Easterners, Japanese, have held farming and agriculture in great esteem. Okay, and it is only in the modern 50 years that agriculture has kind of been under stress for reasons that maybe become obvious to you as you talk through the session. Next slide. Again, agriculture is the fulcrum on which humanity gets defined. Okay, we human beings, we say we are social animals. Well, we were animals, but what makes us human is agriculture, because it is agriculture that taught men and women to live a settled life. Earlier, we used to hunt and eat our food, but after farming, after agriculture, we grow our food. Now, whether you are a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian, you are essentially growing your food. You're not hunting down the jungle. Okay, so that defines the differentiating factor between animals and humans, as I look at it. Another perspective: agriculture is the only human activity that creates new matter. We harness solar energy in terms of heat and light. Heat maintains the atmosphere on the farm, and light through photosynthesis gets converted into matter through various food stuff, various grains, cereals, pulses, what have you. Basically, crops, I would describe them as. So it's the only human activity that creates new matter. Everything else is conversion, whether it is an oil refinery or a pharmaceutical or a steel industry or automobile, everything. Okay, is just conversion. It is not creation. So new creation happens only in agriculture. Okay, other than forests, of course, forests is God given, but effortfully, um, agriculture generates new matter, and it's the only profession, only activity that generates new matter. Secondly, now we are all educated, we know the impact of waste on the planet. Agriculture does not create any waste. It The remains go back to the soil. Essentially, agriculture is the mechanism through which solar energy gets converted into food in terms of matter. Now, food, when I say food, I talk of food for every element of the farm ecosystem, not just humans. You have humans, you have cattle, you have earthworms, you have birds, you have a lot of microorganisms, okay, in the soil that get food from these material remains. It's a food chain. It's a food cycle. Okay, the refuse of one species of animal is food for the next species of animal. and it goes like that. And this circulation is all happening on the farm. That's why I said farming is nothing but a celebration of life. The plant, as we all know through Jagdish Chandra Bose's research, that it has sensitivity. It's a living being, a quasi living being, except that it can't move from one place to the other. So we have humans, we have farm animals, and all other dependent species on that ecosystem called a farm. Okay, and it's a celebration of life. So that's the uniqueness. What motivates me is, in a nutshell, be the change you wish to see in the world. It's a very simply said thing. It's very easier said than done. Takes a lot of conviction. It tests your conviction. The other is also very interesting. It's a 17th century poet. It's the period is around the period of our Shivaji Maharaj. He said, John Dryden says, "Look around the habitable world, how few know their own good, or knowing it pursue." आपलं भलं कशात आहे हे किती लोकांना कळतं, आणि ज्यांना कळतं त्यापैकी किती लोकांना वळतं. That is the point. And it's a beautiful statement. It's a poetic, it's a rhyming couple of lines that continue to motivate me. Earth can provide for everyone's need, but not for one man's greed, not even for one man's greed. That's again Mahatma Gandhi. So these three motivators actually um, um, led me to get into farming full fledged. Okay, so they have been a motivating factor for me and for my transition. Now, this is a slide that I wish to draw your attention to. We are already more than 8 billion. Okay, just last week when G20 met in Philippines, I think we crossed the 8 billion population of the globe. What is happening right now, and why each one of you should be concerned about, and what you can do in your own small way to address this crisis that is facing us. One, there is a steep decline in land available per capita. Okay, the area, they don't make land anymore. It's not manufactured, it's fixed. The surface of earth on which farming can happen is fixed. But the population has been exponentially growing. Secondly, because of intensive chemical agriculture in the past 50, 70 years, there has been a serious stress on the soil that we engage for agriculture. And there is serious decline, erosion. The soil structure has gone for a toss, the soil texture has gone for a toss, soil itself, due to landslides, due to several other factors, intensive chemical farming is losing its hold on the ground. So not just area per capita, but the soil available per capita for agriculture is also going down. Now there is a book which says there are only 60 harvests left. Now this is serious. This is available on the shelf of many bookstores, and you may want to check it out. 60 harvests. You're talking of a world where even agriculture will become difficult in about 50 years from now. And that is why, come back to the first slide that we mentioned, that without food there can be no life. So everybody's life is under a threat because of loss of soil. Soil volume is one, and organic carbon in the soil, which is less than 0.25% when it should be more than 1% at least for any kind of agriculture to happen. Okay, so that is also at a serious low. So we are not just talking of acreage, we are not just talking of soil volume, we are also talking of soil health in terms of organic carbon. And we just have only this earth to live on, and only the food that we grow is going to be feeding us. And if the soil gets into trouble, gets into obsolescence, it's a tough word to really justify for soil, but that's what it is. We are facing some very serious crisis, and all of you from the young generation have the onus on yourselves to do whatever little bit you can to reverse this trend. Okay, so that's this slide. This is the most important content, I would say. I've repeated it at the end of the presentation as well, so you should be concerned about that. Now let's look at the big picture in the farming. This is the second. First part was why agriculture is important. I hope I have done my best to really communicate the message, and I hope it has gone down well. It may scare you to some extent, but that's the way it is. Next slide, Santosh. Well, when we talk of farming, there are a dozen dimensions. Now, each of these dimensions of farming is a huge subject in its own right. Agriculture, we are talking of staples, the wheat, the rice, the pulses, the lentils, the oil seeds, etc. That by and large forms what is called as agriculture. Then you have horticulture, vegetable, fruit, spices, etc. Horticulture. Okay. Pisciculture, growing of fish for food in fresh water and even saline water, seawater. There are universities dedicated to fisheries. Pisciculture, basically fish farming, is a separate subject in its own right. Aquaculture, you're talking of prawns and shrimps. Okay. Then animal rearing, which is typically known as farming in the American and the European context. You grow pigs, you grow cows, goats, sheep, essentially for meat. You grow animals, cut them, and eat them. That's the trend focus of the Western countries, predominantly because of the climate there. 4 months you can't really grow vegetation in the open. So that's then you have poultry. You grow hen, duck, quails, etc. for eggs and meat. That's a separate subject. Dairy farming. You rear cows or buffaloes, and then you milk them, and you produce dairy products like you have milk, you have curds, you have spray dried powders, you have umpteen kind of variants of different milk products. Then for human lifestyle, floriculture. You would be surprised. A couple of districts around Pune are intensively into growing roses for the Valentine's Day in Europe. They grow roses here in the protective atmosphere and they ship it all the way to Europe so that Europeans can have flowers for Valentine's Day. Now, one single Valentine's Day is a good big market for a lot of floriculture people in India. So floriculture is a different dimension. Apiculture, the honey that comes to you comes from apiaries. So you have different species of bees. They are kept in different apiaries, and there is a technical way to really, in a non-invasive, non-violent manner, harvest honey. So apiculture is another. Sericulture, you've heard of silk, rearing silkworms, feeding them mulberry leaves, and drawing silk, making silk fiber, making cloth from silk. That entire thing comes under sericulture. Agroforestry, you need wood for your books and paper and newsprint and everything. So there is a agroforestry model which typically grows pulp making wood. So you grow trees, you cut them, you sell it to the paper factory, they will make pulp and then paper and stuff like that. Then pearl farming, there are people crazy about buying pearls. So people around Hyderabad, they have devised ways and means to do freshwater pearls. So pearl farming is another. Again, these are for human lifestyle, and the first section is for human food. So I just wanted to emphasize that when you talk of farming, you're talking about a really huge subject. Okay, and I in my talk will be focusing on a very little bit on the first part of it. Next slide. This is a brief comparison of agricultural landscapes in the India and the West. India, typically, we have sunshine all around the year. We have several agricultural zones, depending on the climate, depending on the soil. In the West, you have probably just over half a year, 4 months to 3 months, I think, are under snow. So there are limitations in which the agricultural landscape offers options to people. Growing seasons, well, we have three defined growing seasons. One is the rainy season, which is Kharif. Second is the winter, which is Rabi. And third is the summer, which is Unhali, we call it in Maharashtra. Western, maybe two seasons. I'm not aware. I won't comment on that. Main focus, well, in Indian context, you have focus on growing food crops for human consumption. Whereas in the West, you probably are more inclined towards growing animal fodder and then feeding it to animals, um, making silage so that it can take care of the winter snowy months, and then grow animals and then cut them and eat them. Land availability is pretty small in our country in India and pretty large in the West. Hundreds of acres is very common in the United States and Australia and some other countries, even Russia, Ukraine, everywhere. Agri infrastructure is poor in our country, in India. When I say agri infrastructure, I'm talking about end last mile roads, the power connectivity, and general access to markets and stuff like that. That is pretty strong in the West. Mechanization is very low. In India, you still rely on animal power, which is not a bad thing, by the way, because it's more eco-friendly. And in the West, you have high mechanization to the extent that farmers, I would say, they are more like machine operators. You have huge, monstrous trucks and tractors and harvesting equipment, which run into maybe 100 or even more horsepower capacities. They're monstrous trucks, and the farmer there is more like an operator, I would say. Processing and value addition is very low in India, and that's why a lot of agricultural and horticultural grown stuff is wasted to the extent of 20-25% depending on the area and depending on the crop. That is not the case in the West. You almost process everything. The slides that Karthik showed in the beginning are entirely processed food. Okay, I saw a tea sachet there. I saw a dairy kind of product. Then there are different processed products there on the screen. So that's very high in West as well as in China and Japan, but not so much in India. And that is exactly the focus of the government and of entrepreneurs in India right now. That's where even I'm doing some small stuff. Well, when it comes to farming, when I say farming, I imply sustainable or organic farming, okay, or natural farming, which is substantially different from the conventional. When I say conventional, I'm talking about the past 50, 70 years. What is in vogue today? The cropping today, the Western conventional farming focuses on monocropping. We have large farms with, let's say, corn, or large farms with, let's say, wheat. Whereas sustainable farming model, you talk of mixed cropping and intra-cropping and intercropping. Okay, you grow multiple crops in the same area, and that's an art. The Western type of farming, the conventional farming, is more of uh, factory type of farming compared to sustainable farming, which is more like an art, and which our ancestors followed. Unfortunately, it has got lost in the past 30, 40, 50 years. But there are meaningful efforts to revive and showcase them in the modern context as well now. In conventional farming, you have global and foreign crops, whereas in sustainable farming, you grow local crops, what are suited to the local agroclimatic conditions and what are also suited best for food purpose for the people staying in that geography. Okay, so when I say local and native crops, I imply the agricultural produce as well as the food habits of those people. Seeds, typically in organic or sustainable farming, a farmer would have his own seeds because he's not buying genetically modified or hybrid seeds from the seed companies. He's making his own seeds. Okay, so basically you're focusing on native seeds, native crops, heirloom seeds, which typically get transplanted from one generation to the other. In terms of material inputs, synthetic chemicals is widely used to the um, disadvantage of our atmosphere. You have nitrate pollution, you have all kinds of soil health problems because of synthetic fertilizers being used. And sustainable farming typically focuses on natural materials. Okay, so you have cow dung slurry, you have biogas slurry, you have composts, you have vermicompost, you have fish meal, you have bone meal, all natural stuff that can degrade and enrich the local farm ecology. Yields typically are low compared to the conventional farming, but then, you know, conventional farming is not sustainable because 20 years from now, that farmland may not produce anything. But in sustainable farming, it goes on increasing, it is enriching the ecosystem. Nutrition, well, in sustainable agriculture is pretty high, in conventional it is very low. Impact on soil and ecology, in conventional it's badly depleting. As I said, in the quality of soil slide that I mentioned, intensive chemical agriculture has really ruined soils worldwide, and there is great effort to move towards sustainable farming. The essence of farming in conventional farming is about business. How much do you put in? How much do you take home? Okay. Whereas in sustainable farming, it's more of a way of life. You grow your own food, you care for the earth, you behave like the trustee of the land that you own, not like the capitalistic owner of the land that you own. Okay, so that's essential difference. We can, I mean, it's a pretty big subject, but I tried to give you a glimpse of that. And I hope the young ones on this group should focus on understanding and appreciating each of these in a deeper manner. Farmer, well, he has to be a great juggler. He is a great juggler. There are macro factors like the environment, climate change, seasonality, shifts of seasons, markets, global markets, agreement with different countries, infrastructure, as I said, roads. These are macro factors that impact everybody. And micro factors are the farmer's own farm. What was my previous crop? What should I grow now? What is the local climate? Is there enough winter chill expected to grow wheat or not? What is the ambient temperature? Is it the right time to sow? Or should I wait for a couple of days? What is the soil moisture? If I lose moisture, then the sowing is delayed. I have to execute my sowing operation when the soil moisture is right. Soil organic carbon. My farming practices, how are they impacting the organic carbon? Am I depleting? Am I increasing it? Do I add the agricultural waste back to the soil so that there is no net depletion on year to year basis or a season to season basis? Soil microbiology. You would be surprised. There are millions and millions of microbial organisms in a spoonful of soil. Okay. And if a true organic farmer were to answer the question, who is the farmer? Nature or the soil microbes are the real farmers. We are only caretakers. That is an honest answer that a genuine sustainable farmer will give you. He's only a caretaker, he's only a watchman kind of person. Wind speed, it impacts in a big way, especially the pest control operations, spraying operations, and even if there is a cold wave, the wind direction will tell you that in the next 2 days It's going to be cracking of my fruit if it's a grape farmer. So it has a very, these are micro factors impacting a particular zone, a particular farm. Pest incidents, labor availability. This is just to give you an idea that there are several factors that are beyond a farmer's direct control, and yet he has to manage his show considering and duly respecting each of those factors. What is a conducive factor now might turn adverse factor as the season progresses. This is the slide that typically talks of a crop cycle. For people who are young, they need to understand how it works. So it starts with the field preparation. Okay, depending on what crop I need to grow, the field has to be prepared in a certain way. Then comes the sowing operation. Okay, and then comes emergence. The seeds will sprout and they will emerge. That's a pretty interesting magic unfolding time. Okay, if by some reason the emergency is not good, then the farmer has to again get into resowing operation in the next week or so before the time zone, the time window is not conducive anymore. So sowing, emergence, then you have crop nutrition. The crop needs a lot of nutrients to grow up. Whether it is the compost or the vermicompost or the soil microbes in adequate proportion that are creating the nutrition for the soil, for the crop. Okay, it's a pretty interesting and important part of the crop's yield. Pest management is the next. You have to find out by constantly observing, are there any pests, are there any insects, is there any disease. Okay, when I say pest management, I there should be a slash disease management. I forgot to put that slash there. So one has to identify whether there is a pest incidence in terms of insects or there is a disease that only symptoms can be seen and the disease is somewhere in the soil. Then you have to, based on what you see here, uh, crop protection and management is important. You have to get into spraying or adequate soil or water treatment. Now, by the way, I've kept it simple for you, but in the real life farm, this doesn't happen so sequentially. One has to go back and forth. Malnutrition can lead to disease, pest incidents. So there is a lot of juggling that one has to get into on a daily basis there. And as I said, one interesting quote I would like to quote here: "The farmer's footsteps are the best manure for a crop." Okay, meaning the farmer has to personally take care of his crop. He has to visit. He has to grow. He has to go. And based on the daily observation and daily conditions, he has to take actions towards making the right decisions and fruiting of the effort that he has sown. Then comes the harvest. At a particular harvest stage, you harvest the crop either through manual means or mechanized means. Okay, and then you dry it in sun or through dryers. Typically, then you either sell your produce or you send it to processing. And if you're an organic farmer, you would like to, at the harvest stage itself, you have to protect and conserve the seed for the next sowing season. Okay. Unlike a chemical farmer who would sell his produce and go to the market and buy his seed again in the next season. With organic sustainable farming, you have your own seeds. So that is taken care of in this cycle. So this is more to give you, typically a wheat crop is a 110-day crop. A jowar crop is something like 110 days crop. A chana or a gram. I don't know you are familiar with that, but a gram is a typical 75 to 80-day crop. A green gram, moong, is a 65 days crop. A black gram, urad, is typically 75 to 80-day crop. Corn is typically a 100-day crop, 90 to 100-day crop. Bajra or pearl millet is typically 90-day crop. So depending on the soybeans is typically 70 to 75-day crop. So depending on the crop, the area, the climate, the variety that you sow, this crop cycle is very important. Efficient management of this crop cycle is heart of the farming life. Well, now let us take a peek into the life of the farming life. I've tried to put my daughter and my son on the pictures so that since most of the audience in this forum is children. In farming, there is a lot of interplay between uh, humans, animals, machines, trees, flowers, birds, bees, bumblebees, earthworms. In a true sense, farming is a celebration of life. Okay, life is teeming in a well kept farm ecology, which cares for every living species, not just um, greedily only focusing on the human need, but the entire. So this slide, I think, captures it pretty well. You have machines, you have animals, you have birds, you have people, you have tools, implements, uh, everything. So this is a great interplay that a, a farmer enjoys, or you can see it on a farmer's farm. It's a lot of hard work. Okay, this is just a glimpse. As you can see, the atmosphere we are talking about something around May, early June. It's 40 degrees plus, harsh, pretty harsh climate. Okay, it's a lot of hard work and some light work as well. Here, my daughter Shruti, she's on the one hand watering a plant that was just planted, and on the other, it's a different time of the season. She is collecting um, wheat plant for seed for the next season. As I said, we keep our own seed. So this is more of a seed collection. It's a light work, but it's a very important work. And the next slide, it's some smart work. Why smart? I'll tell you a couple of things here. On the right, you see Shruti with the earhead of sorghum. Okay, it's a earhead. Kanish jala पण मराठीत म्हणतो. कणीस. हे कणीस उलट आहे. So the smart work is we have chosen a type of variety that grows the earhead upside down so that birds cannot sit on top of it and eat it away. In a normal earhead, it will be upright, and the birds find it very easy to perch on them and to take away the entire grain. So the farmer is left with nothing. So smartly, we have to adopt such means. On the other hand, on the left, you see a crop of roselle, the red one, mixed cropping with the yellow one, which is the regular tuar ki dal, arhar, turita peek hai. The red one, well, it's a close relative of okra and cotton, which is grown on our area. So we have adopted this as a new crop to the area, which is new, um, but not really new because it belongs to the same family, which is a traditional crop of that area. So by doing some changes of crop pattern, you can think of a differentiating factor to produce some interesting products out of that roselle. So these are some smart decisions a good farmer will always take. As I said, this is my son Chaitanya playing with the bullock and a cow. Okay, farmers' friends aren't just human. We have animals, we have birds, We have earthworms, we have subsoil animals, we have snakes and mongoose also on the farm because they protect the crop from rodents, from rats. So we don't meet them, but they are our friends. It's um, that spirit that we look at them. So it's interesting. It's a very very multi-dimensional friendship that a farmer has to cultivate on his farm compared to a regular other profession. These are some magical moments. One is Shruti when she was about 1 year, 1.5 year old. The left one is a crop of wheat. It was pretty interesting. We had a certain variety that was having a 1 foot ear head of wheat, and the other is the turmeric crop. It was pretty nice, pretty cool. And when I closed her eyes and put her on the farm, that was the reaction that I captured on the camera. Wow, it is absolutely magical. Some moments on the farm are truly magical. You can't put them on words, in words. This is what you get, innocent pleasure. Now, on the left, you see Shruti and Chaitanya and Aarti, my wife, with a 1 day old calf. Okay. The cow that you saw in the earlier slide had delivered this calf, and we all went to see that. And this is how you can't really um, compare these pleasures with anything. On the other hand, you see Shruti resting after some hard work on the farm. You can see the shadow of the neem tree. It's right scorching afternoon. You can see you can't even see the sky to be blue. It's pretty sunny, harsh day, and the shade of a neem tree. It is fantastic. You have to be experiencing it to be believing it. Okay, so these are all glimpses. Now this is again, I draw on the earlier slide when I talked of organic farming versus conventional farming. And then I talked about the smart decision of having roselle as a crop. Here, as a farmer, we have to differentiate, innovate, and stay on the pitch. It's a very financially tough profession to be in. Okay, we'll talk about it separately. But innovation, differentiation, processing is certainly an answer to that. Excuse me. On the left, you see some crops that we produce on a regular basis. Um, one, the green one you see is the chana, Bengal gram, chickpea, as they call it in English. Even after harvesting, even after drying, it is green. So that's pretty innovative for that area. It's a good variety, appreciated well by our customers. Then the next one, as we go clockwise, is a small, a very little chana. Again, it's a size of a jowar grain. The third one is a regular Bengal gram. The fourth one is the तुअर की दाल, the pulse. हम लोग we have our dal every day, right? आपण रोज वरण खातो. तर ते वरण ज्या डाळीपासून बनतं ते तुरीची डाळ. तुम्हाला ते मागे स्लाइडवर दाखवलं होतं. So this is that turichi dal that we have, and then you have jwari on the left. Again, regular jwari which grows in our area, native variety. In the middle, you have bansi gehu, apla gahu, bansi gahu, which is a hallmark of our area, the central peninsular area of India. The native wheat variety is bansi. That's what we cultivate. So these are some native crops we differentiate on the nativity. 90% people would grow hybrids, whereas we grow native seeds. On the right, again, as I said, some differentiating, some innovating factor. This is again a new crop for the area, but a traditional Indian crop across the country. But in the passage of time, people have forgotten that. Roselle or Lalambadi. We are betting big on this, on a processing potential. It makes excellent herbal drink. This is one of the best herbal drinks of the world. Okay, it has excellent nutrients, very rich in iron, potassium, calcium, vitamin C, and a lot of power-packed antioxidants named anthocyanins. which give it a red color. So that is what we are communicating that through this slide, that a farmer has to differentiate, innovate, because it's a cruel market, driven by a lot of vested interest, driven by a lot of pressures on economic front. But a smart organic farming effort, by differentiating, innovating, we can really make some good products. Here is our small Chaitanya at a farmer's market trying to sell our produce. And you have a couple of banners there, and the food that we just discussed, it is packed and put on the counter there. So this is how in fact, just last week we had a very encouraging response to our Ambadi Sarbat in Aurangabad at a farmer fair. So this is a typical um, picture of Chaitanya, and all of us do sell at farmers markets. Typically, they happen over weekends. So even Shruti and Chaitanya, my children, can come and join us and actually experience interacting with the world firsthand. It's important. As I said, any effort in farming has to be a family effort, whether it is adjustments in terms of schedules, whether it is adjustment in terms of rolling up the sleeves and taking up the work, or adjustment in terms of even taking financial sacrifices at times. Uh, the family has to be together. On the right, you have me receiving the award of Krishi-Bhooshan organic farming from the Chief Minister of Maharashtra at that point in time. So again, this cannot be overemphasized, that farming success can only happen if the entire family is involved and engaged and committed. As I said, this brings me to the fourth and I think final part of the presentation, which is the future of farming. This is a repeat slide, except that the graphic is portrayed differently. Okay, this should hit you hard. The land available is going down exponentially, very steeply. The soil availability, the soil quality, the soil organic carbon is going down dramatically. The population is increasing at a very rapid rate. We have already crossed 8 billion. And the per hectare area, I think, is around 0.15 as we speak per capita. Okay. And 3.2 tons of soil per capita is getting wasted every single year. Okay, 3.4 tons per year soil wasted because of bad agricultural practices, climate change, everything. And by the way, that is substantially more than what you consume per capita as food. Okay, so that should tell you the alarming situation we are in. And you young guys, girls, the onus is on you to reverse the trend and to really do something constructive. We'll come to that, what you can do. As of now, you are saying that many of us may not become farmers. Well, reserve your comment for another 10 to 15 years, and you'd probably make a different comment. What is the trending stuff in agriculture today? Sustainable farming. It goes by different names in different geographies. Natural farming, organic farming, LISA, which is low external input sustainable agriculture. Then biodynamic, again, a practice purported by one Australian scientist, which typically talks of different constellations and different activities linked to those constellations. It's pretty interesting. Regenerative agriculture is another thing wherein you increase the soil organic carbon, you regenerate that piece of land where you farm. Conservation agriculture, then permaculture, where you have no-till agriculture. You essentially using the residue of the previous crop to build base for the next crop. Permaculture, multi-layer farms, food forests, so food gardens as they call it. These are the trending. I won't call them fads, because they are serious efforts. Then you have terrace farming, urban farming, vertical farming. Because of space constraints, as we just saw on the previous slide, the acreage, the area of arable land available per capita is going down. And the only way I think people can think of is to either improve the productivity of land by improving the soil quality and managing it better. And second is to have a vertical farm, wherein in the same footprint of space, you can probably grow multiple crops at different levels. Interesting. I mean, many um, models are available. Some green airports are also having terrace farming on their rooftops. I don't know, but I've seen some videos of that. Hydroponic, aquaponic, aeroponic. These are techniques essentially talking about growing food stuff without use of soil. Okay, interesting. You have different troughs and different media in which seedlings grow, um, and nutrients are fed to them through canals and irrigation pipelines. uh, Again, it's a very interesting subject which is unfolding and evolving as we speak. Artificial intelligence based agriculture. Well, I have my own reservations, but nonetheless I wish to put it on there so that you become aware of it. Precision farming, robot based, drone based farming. Essentially what uh, is being talked about is that some probes and some gadgets placed on the farm will make decisions about the crop um, management, the cycle that we mentioned. Okay, so there are people using AI in a small way. They have begun using this AI in a small way. Farming focused on carbon credits. Again, the business mind of the capitalists doesn't go away. It's a big bully that is putting a lot of pressure on the farming ecosystem. But nevertheless, people are not talking of farming based on carbon credits. So if you grow XYZ number of trees with a girth of XYZ centimeters on your farm and keep them for 20 years, 30 years, then these capitalist people will issue farming the carbon credits to you, which is again a negotiable instrument. It's a tradable commodity. People are talking of stock exchanges where carbon trades will be traded. I don't know if they're happening already, but should be very close to that day. Okay, so that's about farming. You've seen the glimpses of our farming life on the farm. This is what we intend to do in future. I'm convinced about sustainable farming practices. So we'll continue that. We'll focus on growing local seasonal crops, native varieties, and organic methods. We will expand into value addition. Okay, we select crops which have processing potential. Okay, so that's definitely done. We have just formed a farmer producer company for the herbal drink that I just briefly mentioned about. We want to grow it up, scale it up, and hopefully do well with even consumers, because they don't have many options in terms of health drink based on agricultural natural material. We also want to get into agri-tourism. Okay? So instead of selling farm produce, we sell the ambience. We create an ecosystem which is there, but more from a tourist standpoint. Somebody can come and stay on the farm. Authentic farm stays. Minimalistic living is another concept that is gaining ground in the East, especially Japan. Minimalistic living. Okay, you don't need much to live. That is the theme of minimalistic living, and that we want to actually showcase on our farm. Authentic farm stays. We want to invite young people to come and stay with us on the farm. Right now, we don't stay on the farm, but we want to build that ecosystem there, and people can actually try their hand at farming. There are many organizations across the world which encourage this more to sensitize people and give people an opportunity to try their hand at farming. Many people want to do farming, but they don't know where to start. So this is an area where we want to capitalize on. And India is a land with a predominantly agricultural backbone, I would say. Okay? And all Indian heritage events which are linked to farming, we want to showcase them on the farm. Like Diwali, for example, the Vasubaras, the Gobaras, is we want to celebrate. Darsha Veda Amavasya happens in December. We want to celebrate on the farm. Vasanta Panchami is an Indian event. We want to celebrate on the farm. There are a lot of other festivals linked directly to farming that we want to showcase and celebrate. There are ancient rishis and sages who have contributed big volumes of wisdom to farming, the thought of farming. And we want to have an area to pay tribute to their effort. So you'll have probably statues of those sages with their work written out. We already have a temple of goddess Shaakambhari on the farm. It's probably the only temple. Shaakambhari is a deity. Um, um, I would say she's a goddess, the mother of vegetation. Okay, so we have already installed her on our farm. She's blessing us, and we have begun our effort towards creating this farm ambience that can be of not just inspirational but also um, entertaining as well as sensitizing to especially children. Well, what can you do? Okay, I've listed out, I think, 8 activities here. What can you do? Well, become a vegan or a vegetarian. By that, you will reduce the methane and the greenhouse gas load on the planet. Okay, so you may not directly become a farmer, but by becoming a vegan or a vegetarian, you will contribute to a betterment of farming by easing the pressure on farming that global warming puts. You can start a kitchen garden, whatever three, four, five stuffs you want to grow. It could be a coriander, it could be a spinach, it could be anything. Okay, try and understand. It'll help you appreciate life, appreciate the nuances that nurturing uh, dimension to your own personality. As far as possible, buy directly from farmers or farmer groups or farmer companies or farmers markets. Okay, right now, whatever Karthik showed on the slide, um, talked of processing. It comes from some factory. But if you have farmers doing that, prefer them over the other corporates. Please don't push farmers hard for a lower price. Generally, farmers would pitch their prices pretty fairly. Okay. Buy local, seasonal, and organic in that order. That is your way of contributing to sustainability. For example, whatever vegetables you have locally in UK, you prefer them over some imported stuff because that's not going to be sustainable. And again, from a health standpoint, it is always advised that whatever is local is good for your climate where you are staying. So do that. You should connect deeply with a few farmer families for sourcing your own food. Like you're familiar with the concept of a family doctor. You should have a family farmer. Okay, try that. Maybe may not be one effort, one step. Most of you, I think all of you are from India by origin. So I'm sure you have some connection in your hometown, in your native village. Connect with one farmer. Each family of yours, you connect with one farmer. Okay? Support him. You can buy his stuff. You can give him working capital. You can, in your own ways, you can support him to make it easy. That also helps you connect to your roots. And also an appeal, well, we have formed a farmer producer company. And if any of your relatives back home have farmland, please connect me to them. Okay, so that we want to include them in our efforts for bringing out processed products and different initiatives under our farmer producer company. Well, I think we've run through that completely. Do we have something else? Okay, good. Recommended reading. These are some books that are profound, okay, and very easy to read. Plenty for All by Sri Dabholkar. Farmers of 40 Centuries. Look at the title. Farmers of 40 Centuries. You're talking about a history of a land where 4,000 years of farming has happened and continues. This is by an English author, F.H. King. Uh, there's a lot of photographs from China and Japan and Korea. He traveled. This is these two. This Farmers of 40 Centuries are, I think, 100-year-old book. It's 100-year-old book, and he depicts how small practices on their farm have really been carried religiously for 4,000 years, and it's amazing. Soil and Health and the Agricultural Testament. These two books are again profound, by Sir Albert Howard. He was a British scientist, a microbiologist, soil scientist, and very profound. These are like gospels of sustainable farming. Okay, and then you have One Straw Revolution by the great Masanobu Fukuoka-san. Masanobu Fukuoka-san lived till about 20 years ago. He expired. He did wonders through his um, methods of farming. And he says, and I would end with that, agriculture is not about growing crops. It is about cultivating human minds. Okay. So this is again the end point. All translation of our ancient Indian literature is available with Asian Agri History Foundation. I would recommend that to you as a good reading material. These books you should pick up and keep it in your library, Santosh. Um, they're profound. They're global literature, fantastic books, and for whatever they may be worth, it's going to be inspiring for all of you. So thank you very much for your time and kind attention. I hope I've done justice to unfolding agriculture in front of you in whatever time we had. And I'd be happy to answer any questions of yours to the best of my ability.
Yeah, okay. So Karthik and Sai will ask some questions. I think we are running out of time now, Kuldeepak. So I've asked them to like strip down on some of the questions. So do you want to start, Karthik?
Despite having chemical engineering MBA degrees and a well-paid corporate job, why did you decide to do farming?
Well, I discovered that was my calling. Okay, that's a simple answer to that. I did chemical engineering not because I loved chemical engineering, but at that point in time, that was more of the best option to be employed quickly. So we went into that. Then I moved to management because I thought that offers me a better expression of work area. And all along, as I said, I described my childhood experiences. I wanted to own a farm. I wanted to be on the farm, stuff like that. So it was my calling. And every career, every person's effort is about self-discovery, is about self-expression. So there we are.
Yeah, thank you. Now Sai will ask the next question.
Why do you think that highly educated people should think of farming as a career? Or do you think existing farmers need more education?
Well, again, I have to go back to a story of Sir Albert Howard. Sir Albert Howard was a British officer working in the Caribbean, and the British government. This story is 100-year-old story. This is around 1920, just after First World War. The British government brought him into India, and they told him, "Look, we are inventing this chemical farming, and we want you to tell Indian farmers about the virtues of chemical farming, education." He came back. He came to India. He settled there, understood Indian farming, and he wrote after 20 years of research and understanding Indian farming. He wrote to the British government saying, "Indian farmers don't need education. It is we who should learn from them the practices of farming and actually propagate into the other colonial areas that British rules." So there we are. Why should educated people come into farming? Well, the challenge is, as I said in the first slide, without food, there can be no life. And without farming, there can be no food. So the challenges on the front of soil, today, we don't have good answers. And that is because the A grade talent has moved away from farming. It has gone into medicine or higher levels of engineering, and what is left behind is not really the best of caliber to find answers to the questions that are quite overwhelming at this point in time. So if the complex questions stare in the face of mankind, you probably need the most complex, most competent brains to really think of it. Okay, if if a meteorite is going to hit Earth, NASA will go ahead of its schedule and try and hit it outside in the space. Why? Because the top brains are there. They anticipate the danger and they have the wherewithal to really address and find a solution to that. Look at agriculture. The crisis is staring in the face, but nobody has answers because we don't have the best people in positions that can offer solutions. So that's the reason. Education, well, certainly, learning is a lifelong process for anybody, and farmers are no exception. I learn every day on the farm. So definitely, learning needs to happen, but you certainly need high grade caliber to come into farming, and not just in farming per se, but also allied agriculture universities, for example. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Now Karthik will ask the next question.
How do you decide what crop to take and when?
Well, okay. See, in any agricultural climate zone, okay, there is a mix of crops that can be grown. So the degrees of freedom are uh, to some extent defined. Okay, so there is a portfolio of crops that I can grow on my farm, and out of those, I have to look at that particular time what will fetch me a better return, what will be in tune with my effort towards the market. Okay, for example, I can't be growing rice on my farm, so rice is completely out of the window. But out of wheat, which wheat can I grow? Whether to allocate a space for wheat or go for jowar, again, to some extent, climate decides that. This year, I'll give you an example. The monsoons were prolonged, and up to middle or end of October, we had rains. Now, that period is uh, 15 days too late to grow jowar. So, by default, I don't have land, I don't have time to prepare land. The rains are not allowing me to prepare land, and the time window has elapsed. So, I cannot grow jowar. I have to go for what is the next best option available. So within the portfolio, we'll have 4 or 5 winter crops: a chana, a rajma, a wheat, and the alsi, what you call it, linseed. So these 4 crops. you depending on the land availability, labor availability, you pick and choose. Harvesting considerations are also important. If you have unseasonal rains, if there is a forecast for unseasonal rains in March, April, you may want to go for a short duration crop. So it's again a dynamic decision that has to be taken on the fly. You can't really pre-plan too much ahead in farming.
Thank you. So you'll ask the next question.
Food habits have changed over the years. Could you please talk about its impact and alternatives, like oat instead of jawar as an example?
Right. Well, unfortunately, what has happened is again under the influence. You understand this concept of bullying, right? Bullying. The corporate lobbies and the capitalistic markets are in a way bullying agriculture. Okay, to places where they voluntarily might not want to go. For example, I'll give you the when we were children in our let's say 40-50 years ago, we had never heard of soybeans. Okay, Maharashtra never grew soybeans in let us say up to 1975. But now 40-50 years down the line, soybean is number one crop of Maharashtra. Now what that means? It means it has taken the place of jowar. Jowar is no longer the main crop of Maharashtra, and therefore people are not eating jowar. There is no fodder for cattle because the leftover of a jowar tree is plant is given to animals as food, as fodder. So we end up eating wheat. Now, wheat is not native food for this climate. Wheat is a native food for Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Northern MP, that area. So what happens in Maharashtra? Well, you have complications, health complications related to gluten, because gluten is essential component of wheat. So you understand how a focused effort by US agencies to promote soybeans in Maharashtra uprooted jowar as a crop from Maharashtra, that forcibly changed the food habits of Maharashtrians, and that is build up a highway for different kind of diseases. Now, gluten is a menace in its own right. It's creating endocrine disruptions of a very big order. You have diabetes, you have kidney issues, you have liver issues, you have digestive canal issues, all traced in some way to gluten. But now this is exactly the complicated effort. This has happened not overnight, but over 50 years, and to some extent, many things are irreversible because the over two generations, the farmer family has also changed. They also don't have any cattle now, any bullocks now, so they don't want to grow jowar just because that will provide fodder for their cattle. So they grow wheat and they eat wheat. So this is a complicated kaleidoscope, you know.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question or confuse you even more?
No, it will answer my question. Thank you. Now I'll hand over to Santosh Kaka.
Okay. Thank you, Sai. And Karthik, do you have any specific question that you would like to ask?
Yeah. What are the medicinal values of plants?
Medicinal values of plants. Okay, I can give you some examples for you to appreciate. Okay, because I may know only little. There is one ancient Indian saying in Sanskrit which says, "Nasti moolam anaushadham." Okay, means simply translated, it means there is not even one plant that doesn't have medicinal value. Nasti moolam anaushadham. Okay, it is our lack of comprehension, our lack of understanding about the medicinal use of a particular plant. Okay, having said that, I'll give you a few examples. uh, Curcumin is the essential molecule, curcuminoids, I would say, uh, is the content in turmeric, which is known to be anti-Alzheimer's, anti-cancer. And I even have a few recent papers from leading journals like Elsevier's, which talk of black turmeric being specific curcumin content um, as a drug would cure a particular cancer. Okay? Then you have simple thing like the roselle that I mentioned. It is rich in iron, rich in calcium, rich in vitamin C. Okay, so that's medicinal value. Instead of a Coke, a bottle of Coke, if you take a bottle of our herbal drink, you are done with your daily need for vitamin C and calcium and vitamin A and even magnesium. Okay, in addition to potassium. So that's another. Regular protein comes through your dal, any dal, मूंग की दाल, उड़द की दाल, मसूर की दाल, तुअर की दाल, चने की दाल is the best source of protein of vegetable origin. The horse gram, the kulit as they call it in local language, was supposed to be a poor man's crop. Now it is getting the importance of a superfood. Next year, year 2023 is has been declared as the year of millets by the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO of the world. Okay, millets were poor man's crop. Now they are like superfood because they have complex carbohydrates, they have a very low glycemic index, and they satiate your hunger like nothing else, like wheat or any oat or barley or whatever, you know. So in Ayurveda, they used to say, there is again a saying which I don't have by heart. It says, your food is your medicine.
Very true.
So coming to the question, this is all I can say about.
Yes. Thank you.
ओके, व्हेरी गुड कार्तिक, सई. आता वेळ कमी असल्यामुळे ना आपण ऑडियन्स मधनं एखादी किंवा दुसरा प्रश्न घेऊ. डज एनीबडी वांट टू आस्क अ क्वेश्चन? आप कैन सी लॉट्स ऑफ हँड्स रेज देयर. ओके, वेदिका विचारते.
How do you ensure that your crops like papayas or bananas get to the market in good condition?
Well, the supply chain has to be very strong. The harvesting has to be very right. In fact, it's a good question. I'll put it in a different perspective. See, horticulture is highly supply chain driven. Okay, fruits and vegetables. You need to harvest them at such a stage which is just pre-ripe. Okay, and it has to reach the market in time. Now, I have not forayed into perishables in spite of 14 years, 15 years in farming because I know it's difficult. I am playing the game within my limitations. What I know are my limitations. Okay. So to answer your question, I don't know it personally for that specific crop, but it has to be harvested in good condition. It has to be transported in a cold reefer van. It has to be put in cold storage so that at lower temperature, the degradation of farm produce is very low. And that's how it can reach the market in the right shape and size and fragrance.
Okay, thank you. Jeet.
So I've got two questions from myself and my brother. So wrong question. My question is, sorry, wait. What happens to plants if they don't make enough crops for food?
Okay, that's a very good question. What happens if there is not enough crop for food?
Well, this again emphasizes the ancient Indian way of holding storage. Now, what you're talking about is okay. You have a scarcity of rain or a famine like scenario, in which case the buffers, typically what used to happen at a household level, at a farmer's level, now is happening at a government level. So every government in every country has something called a buffer stock of the essential grains. Okay, so India will have um, a, a few lakh tons of wheat and rice and lentils as buffer stock for the entire population for at least 1 or 2 years. That typically used to happen at a farmer's level. In ancient Maharashtra, in historical Maharashtra, we know there used to be what is called a balad. ओके, भिंतीमध्ये असं मोठं जागा असायची ज्यात हे भरून ठेवलं जायचं, धान्य भरून ठेवलं जायचं. देर यूज टू बी कणग्या, मोठ्या मोठ्या कणग्या असायच्या, त्यात शेणाने असं सारवून वगैरे पूर्ण ठेवलं जायचं. सो स्टोरिंग grain for such years was a regular practice and is a regular practice. Even we do it for ourselves to some extent, but now the government does it at a national level because of different policy initiatives. Does that answer your question, or did it stray into different terrain?
No, the question answer killer at the
Okay, very good. Yeah, thanks, Jeet. Actually, now we are running out of time, so आपण आता काय करूया? I can see lots of you have questions, but Kuldeepak Kaka will be available for us later on as well. So तुमचे प्रश्न जर तुम्ही मला पाठवले, तर we will certainly
Send it on email or WhatsApp, and I'll respond to them to the best of my ability. In fact, Santosh, even I didn't realize how the hour went by.
Oh no, it was fantastic. I mean, yeah, exactly.
I was lost. मला खरंच कळलं नाही. I'm guilty of trespassing onto your forum's time, but can't help it. Sorry.
It was necessary, and as we all recognize की हे खूप आपण we don't appreciate, आणि सगळी मुलं थांबली आहेत, फक्त आता आमच्या जेवायच्या वेळा वगैरे झालेल्या आहेत लंचच्या. तर आपण काय करूया, तुम्ही तुमचे प्रश्न मला द्या आणि आपण नक्की कुलदीपक काकाला विचारू आणि 100% तो आपल्याला त्याची उत्तरं देईल. नेहमीच्या स्टाईल प्रमाणे आय एम गोइंग टू आस्क ऑल ऑफ यू टू अनम्यूट आणि आपण त्याला थँक्यू आणि बाय म्हणू आणि मग सेशन एंड करू. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, कुलदीपक, थँक्यू सो मच ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ ऑल ऑफ अस. आमची मुलं, त्यांचे पेरेंट्स, मी आणि सुप्रिया, त्यांच्याकडून खूप खूप धन्यवाद, कारण तुझा सगळा वेळ वेगळा काढून तो आमच्यासाठी देणं हे खूप आमच्यासाठी इट्स व्हेरी व्हॅल्युएबल. आणि आम्ही नक्की आयदर वी विल बिकम फार्मर्स किंवा वी विल डेफिनेटली अप्रिशिएट की काय काय गोष्टी आम्ही करू शकतो, लाईक यू ऍडवाइज्ड अस टू. तर आम्ही ते नक्की करू. आमच्या क्लासेसमध्ये पण आम्ही त्या रिवाइज करू. आणि थँक्यू सो मच. तर मी आता सगळ्यांना तुम्हाला अनम्यूट करतो आणि फील फ्री टू से थँक्यू आणि
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.